making statements that they feel are not kind towards somebody recovering from a stroke. And one thing we know is many Americans and their family members have recovered from strokes successfully. And Dr. Oz has said some things that they've taken exception to. So I think he's going to have to answer for that. As Rick mentioned, the issue of crime. And of course, Fetterman himself is going to have to prove to voters that he's up for the job, not having yet released his medical records, which is a big issue for voters in Pennsylvania.
Rick and Jeannie, thank you so much. I'm delighted to say we're going to be back with our political contributors, Jeannie Shanzano of Iona University and Rick Davis of Stone Court Capital, because we're going to turn to this week's edition of Wall Street Votes, taking a look at what changes in the Congress would mean to Wall Street. This is Balance Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Change can be disruptive, but at Bloomberg, we think bigger. Our sell-side solutions combine trading and automation with market-leading data, so you can evolve, scale, and embrace change. This is Bloomberg for the sell side. Visit Bloomberg.com/sell-side.
Burden LLP Accountants and Advisors presents Tax Chat with Marcy Greenfield, partner and co-leader of Burden's manufacturing, distribution, and retail practice.
With online retail and direct-to-consumer selling becoming industry norms, it is essential for manufacturing, distribution, and retail companies to innovate and remain competitive. Investing in innovation will not only help a company succeed, but will also enable them to qualify for research and development tax credits, which can range from 4 to 7% of all eligible spending for new and improved products and processes. At Burden, we factor in a company's unique circumstances to develop a tax strategy that helps identify and claim eligible R&D incentives. If you're an executive looking to maximize tax savings, let Burden help you move forward with confidence.
For more tax chat from Burden Accountants and Advisors, visit BurdenLLP.com. That's BERDONLLP.com. Burden Accountants and Advisors. We listen, we solve, we do.
An individual's race should not be used to help him or harm him.
This season on Uncommon Law, a pair of lawsuits has made its way to the Supreme Court, and the decision could dramatically change just who gets into which college.
Bloom is effectively using the Asian community as pawns.
Every lawsuit needs a villain.
We'll explore the arguments and the people driving this latest battle over affirmative action.
There might have been 2 or 3 Latinos. Somehow that goes too far.
You let somebody in because of their race, you're keeping somebody else out because of their race.
Can the Constitution be used to remedy society's ills?
I'm the only person in class who has to be like, actually, here's how this affects people that look like me.
Coming October 25th from Bloomberg Law, we'll explore the use of race in college admissions.
What's being decided is whether black and brown people are going to be excluded in significant numbers.
Only on Uncommon Law, wherever you get your podcasts.
Interactive Brokers charges margin loan rates from 3.58% to 4.58%. Their clients can also earn extra income by lending their fully paid shares of stock. Rates subject to change. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. The midterm elections could have real consequences for Wall Street. And to take us through some of them, we welcome now our Wall Street Votes reporter, Shonali Bossack. Shonali, welcome back.
Thank you so much, David. You know, with the control of Congress hanging in balance, there are key positions that Wall Street is watching closely after strict regulations and enforcement actions have targeted financial firms in the first half of President Biden's tenure. Now, if Republicans take control of the House or even the Senate, there are a few critical people to watch, and they include Senator Susan Collins, who's expected to take over as the top Republican on the Appropriations Committee. There's Congressman Patrick McHenry, the top Republican on the House Financial Services Committee, and Jason Smith, who serves on both the Budget and Ways and Means committees. Now, together, these lawmakers have roles on governing bodies that decide budgets and laws for financial services industry and its top cops, namely the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the Department of Justice, which has significant power in cracking down on antitrust and mergers that can fuel significant fees for the big banks and their investors. Now, these lawmakers and their closest allies could seek to ramp down funding for these agencies or otherwise make it more difficult for them to enforce or to proceed with new rulemakings. But meanwhile, Smith and Collins also have oversight of the IRS, and taxation remains a key concern for Americans, particularly wealthier individuals and those who manage their funds. Now, Collins and Smith have drawn funds from key finance executives and committees tied to large corporations. These, David, are the key issues at play, which could become more contentious if Republicans in Congress resist the changes of Biden-era agency officials.
And a terrific rundown it was. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Shonali. Still with us are Rick Davis of Stone Court Capital and Jeannie Shanzano of Iona University. So, Jeannie, let me pick on you here for a second. All this is relevant only if the Democrats take over the House, which, let's be honest, a lot of people think is quite possible. If that happens, it won't be just those committee chairmanships that might switch. We must have some change in the leadership of the Democrats in the House.
Yeah, we absolutely might. And quite frankly, Nancy Pelosi has been asked about this in the last couple days. And, in true Nancy Pelosi style, she says, win, baby, win. Don't worry about that until we win. But if they don't win, there's likely big changes in the offing in the Democratic Party. We've seen grumblings of this for the last several election cycles, due, quite frankly, to the age of the Democratic leaders in the House. And so if Republicans do take the House, as they likely will, we may see some flip over there. And, we've heard this, from people like Abigail Sandberger, for instance, and others who are saying it's time for a new generation of leadership, diversification, not just in terms of gender, but also in terms of age in the House Democratic caucus. So I think that may be in the offing, depending on what happens in the next 2 weeks.
So what about the Republican side? Obviously, I think Kevin McCarthy might be interested in the job of Speaker of the House if it were offered to him. Is he going to have a fight in his hands?
Probably not. I think Kevin McCarthy has played his cards pretty well. I mean, this has been his ambition for some time. He's had to genuflect to Donald Trump to get all the various parties right on board. So I think he'll have a pretty easy way of getting the speakership. Now, how he manages his caucus in the course of doing that is really going to be difficult. One of the very first things he'll have to decide, for instance, is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was stripped of her committee assignments for some pretty heinous stuff she'd said. Does he give her back committee assignments? What's he do with January 6th commission? Does he just put a bunch of Republicans on there and start all over again and, try and whitewash the insurrection on the Capitol, or does he just shut it down? And these are not even legislative issues. They've got their commitment for America that they posted up that is a very ambitious plan that's going to require a lot of votes and a lot of effort in the middle of a presidential campaign at that stage.
But Rick, I assume if in fact the Republicans take the House, and we don't know they will, or again, the election isn't until 2 weeks from tomorrow, but if in fact that happens, I assume that how much leeway Kevin McCarthy, if he is Speaker, has, depends on how big the margin is. How big a margin do you think to have a little bit of comfort?
The trading range on it is if he has 15 or fewer new members, he might have trouble because the consolidation on the right will be such that they can really control the agenda with 30% of the caucus. The reality is they're going to control the agenda with 30% of the caucus, 25% of the caucus. Look, we've seen how the squad on the Democratic side with just 8 members have been able to really control the dynamic there. I mean, this entire Biden administration has had to, sort of do their bidding in the course of their legislative initiatives, and that's the smallest caucus I've ever seen have this much power. I don't doubt that Republicans who are, part of the old Tea Party and the new, sort of MAGA group are going to want the same kind of attention and power. And that's what this is all about. Who gets the power?
Red light camera ahead.
Chairman, or is it going to be this right-wing caucus?
But Jeannie, political science professor, let me ask you, how much power do you get if you've got the House and you don't have the Senate and you don't have the White House? You have power of the pulpit. I mean, you get a lot of attention, but can you really get anything done?
It's going to be obviously very difficult. Even if they take the Senate as well, they may face at some point presidential vetoes in that case. So it is going to be difficult for Republicans. And Kevin McCarthy has his work cut out for him because, as Rick was just talking about, that will be a big caucus. And we already heard in the last few days Marjorie Taylor Greene say, if I am not given power, he will be paying for that with the base. So he is going to be sort of conflicted between his more moderate wing and his more far right wing. wing, and we've seen that with his predecessors, with Paul Ryan, with John Boehner, and others. Nancy Pelosi escaped a lot of that, and she was able to maneuver despite the progressive wing of her party. But it's going to be more difficult, I think, for Kevin McCarthy because he's got a very active far-right wing there in the House.
Okay, thank you so much to both of you. Political contributors Jeannie Shanzano of Iona University and Rick Davis of Stone Court Capital. Check out the Balance of Power newsletter. That is on the terminal and also online. Coming up, Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. In our second hour, we'll talk to Republican candidate for governor of Connecticut. He is Bob Stefanowski. Let's come back next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.